What's going on again, folks? This is Franchise Sports Media's covering of UFC 273. It is over. It is in the books. I am Kalani along with my main man here, Griffin Kemp.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What a night of fights that we had going on tonight. 2 title fights on the line. Griff, overall, from watching the card, we're going to dive into the individual matchups. What was your impressions of tonight's fights?
I think compared to, we came in and we knew exactly who we're fighting. We knew exactly what we were getting. 2 title shots and an up-and-comer to see if he was really the real deal. A lot of questions got answered tonight, not just with Hamzat, but with each belt. Each one got answered, and we really understood who was the champs tonight and who really was, fell short.
Now, very much so. I like what you said there, because for this particular card, a lot of questions were going in. The main event, Alexander Volkanovski taking on the Korean Zombie. Is Alexander truly Alexander the Great? And can he go on this sustained title run and continue his legacy? Will the Korean Zombie be able to come in and be a zombie-like figure and dethrone the champion? The co-main event, we had Aljamain Sterling finally in a rematch with Peter Yan, 13 months in the making. Hey, the first time ended with a DQ because Yan need Jermaine when he was down. Was Jermaine acting? Was Yan truly on his way to demolishing him? That got answered. Let's start with the main event. Alexander finishes the Korean Zombie, 4th round TKO. What was your impressions of the fight and how Alexander looked?
Alexander looked the way, he looked the same way he did against the Brian Ortega fight. He really is the champ for a reason. And people want to take back and they want to say, they didn't respect. I feel like he doesn't get the respect that he deserves as a champion because people believe Max Holloway in those 2 fights. Despite the fact that he got the decision, they really believe Max Holloway was the champ. But during that Brian Ortega fight, you saw that he has the grit. He has what it takes to hold on to that belt. And then tonight was no different. In fact, with a guy like the Korean Zombie, a fan favorite, everyone knows him, everyone loves him. It's hard to watch him kind of go out like that, but it really, Alexander really showed that he's the champ.
Alexander was hitting on all cylinders tonight. His speed, his power, his quickness, his crispness with the striking. It was on a different level. Korean Zombie, obviously, like you said, he's a fan favorite, and he's got the name of Korean Zombie for a reason. Tonight, it just looked like he wasn't able to bring it. Obviously, you look at what Alexander was able to do and how he was able to enforce his will early and often. It just felt like Korean Zombie, every time he tried to get going, 1-2 combination coming from Alexander, body kicks coming from him, in and out movement, and it just felt like he was stuck in the mud and wasn't able to get it through. Shout out to him for a tremendous career. He just wasn't able to pull it out tonight.
He, in true zombie fashion, the fight wasn't even called on his back. The fight got called both men standing on their feet, but the Zombie, that's probably the only positive he can take from tonight was that he didn't go down. He wasn't slept. He wasn't submitted, but he just didn't do enough.
Unfortunately, that was the case, but as such goes on, Alexander Volkanovski and still featherweight champion. Mm-hmm. Speaking of and still, the co-main event, Aljamain Sterling, Funk Master, taking on Peter Yan. Peter Yan, who looked like he was going to be the next long-term bantamweight champion, going this long sustained run, has the first match with Aljamain. A little back and forth. Peter Yan has some advantages, started to overwhelm Sterling. Those a knee to a down opponent, which you can't do. Sterling can't continue. A lot of people felt like he was acting. Oh, he put on a show. He knew he was done, so he faked it. Injuries happened, so Sterling was out all this time. 13 months he had to hear he's not the real champion. He was acting. He faked it. He was scared of Yan. You saw all the memes.
Oh, yeah.
You saw all the memes. Tonight, Sterling proved once and for all, I'm the true champion.
Yes.
Going in there and won a split decision. We kind of saw it a little bit differently. What was your takeaway from watching the Sterling and Yan bout?
That was the feel-good story of the night. You see Sterling and everything he had to go through since that last bout, since being called, seeing everyone questioning him, was that real? Were you faking it? Were you really injured? And the fact that he was able to come back from not just that fight and all the questioning, but also the injuries and this whole delay of this fight. And the fact that he was able to come in, he won against Peter Yan, and he, despite what Peter Yan might say, that fight, he won that fight straight up. There was no question about it.
It was interesting when they decided to say that it was a split decision, because we were both sitting there with others watching and we're like, split decision? Mm-hmm. Wait, what fight were you guys watching? But that is the issue when you let it go to the judges. Sterling instituted a game plan I thought was very eye-opening, is that He went in there. Basically, he told Jan what he was going to do. I'm going to take you down and I'm going to choke you out. And while Jan might be the stronger fighter, while he might be more well-rounded with more tools in a stand-up game, Aljamain Sterling showed, coming from Ray Longo's camp with Matt Serra, Chris Weidman, and all those guys in there in Long Island, taking him down, taking his back, and holding him down there. I mean, he had almost 8 full minutes in a 25-minute bout of ground control on Peter Yan, where Peter looked like he couldn't even get away from the ground attack. It seemed like once Jermaine got to a certain position on the ground, that was it for him. He was in an anaconda grip. Sterling was able to hold on to that. I'm very surprised he didn't get the submission. Came close a couple times.
Very close.
But shout out to Peter Yan for being able to hold his own and to show that no, I'm not that easy to get rid of. But yeah, this one, I think in both of ours, I could clearly say, clearly a dominant win for Aljamain Sterling, who looks like he might have a next opponent already lined up.
Hey, that next opponent was sitting right there, cage side. TJ Dillashaw, ready.
The former champion TJ Dillashaw. They exchanged some words, and that's what you want to do. You just had a good performance against a very tough guy. You got to have somebody on the name. Even though you're the champion, you got to have somebody ready to call out. You got to have somebody to say, whether it's somebody talking trash, trying to come to your division, wanting to come back into the cage, or just somebody you just don't like. Hey, I want to fight you. We don't like each other. Let's go. Peter Yan obviously wants the rematch, but this does seem like the next bout to go with these two, Aljamain Sterling, TJ Dillashaw, sometime later in the year. Now, speaking of what to do next, what some people felt was the people's main event. And boy, was it a tremendous bout.
Oh, my goodness.
Gilbert Burns taking on the uprising of, help me out with this now, Khamzat Chimaev?
Oh, that's Khamzat Chimaev.
Khamzat Chimaev. I do apologize. 3-round war between these two. Chimaev gets the decision victory, but it was a battle, possibly fight of the year candidate?
I would absolutely say so. That fight, we see in the beginning of the fight, Khamzat's doing his walkout. It wasn't a walkout. It was a sprint.
He took off.
He was excited. We all felt the same thing. We were excited for this fight. It almost felt wrong that wasn't the main event. Yep. But obviously, you can't put that fight above 2 title fights. But the fact that the excitement, the build up to that fight, and honestly, I think the fight itself succeeded that. It was one of the great. It was a great fight. It was obviously the fight of the night, and like you said, fight of the year candidate possibly.
Very much so. And one thing that I really loved about this particular matchup was going into it, Khamzat was obviously the big favorite. All the hype and the promo videos was about him, and rightfully so. Before this bout, 4 fights in the UFC. He's only been hit twice. Uno, dos, twice. 4 fights and 2 hits in the UFC. So for him, I understood the hype train, but then Gilbert Burns is like, whoa, wait a minute.
People are going to start showing some respect to Gilbert Burns.
Respect.
Got to put respect on that man's name.
Respect with a K. Gilbert Burns said, hey, I challenged the former champion. I've been in here against the greats. I'm a world-class world jiu-jitsu champion. You guys are going to understand. I'm not no easy pushover. And he even said afterwards, these two went at it. It was more of a stand-up battle. Both had moments of hurting one another, and it felt like they were going to be able to finish each other. But for Khamzat, he really showed he can be pushed into deep waters and still swim. For Gilbert Burns, he showed no matter who you guys put me in here with, win, lose, or draw, I'm no easy win for anybody. I think the biggest winner was the fans.
Absolutely. I feel like you and I both agree that we felt it was, I personally felt it was a privilege to watch that fight tonight. It was a privilege to have that build up, have the hype. Is Khamzat real? Is he really going to be this guy that the UFC is trying to build him up to be? And Gilbert Burns, and the way Gilbert Burns attacked him, he literally was making a statement that he's no stepping stone. I'm not just going to be the guy who you're using to bring your boy up. Yeah. He showed tonight, and you say he only got hit 2 times in previous fights in the UFC. They made up for that tonight.
Oh, without a doubt. He got hit a whole lot more in this fight. Khamzat was coming forward. He's the bigger fighter, well over 6 feet. Gilbert Burns, if we're being nice, 5'9". If we're being nice, maybe on a good day with the slant. But nonetheless, he was coming forward using his aggressive style. He was going for takedown the earlies, but because of Gilbert Burns' jiu-jitsu world-class background, he wasn't able to establish his ground game so easily and so effective like he's done with basically every other fighter. And then, like you said, when Khamzat would get over jealous with coming in and too aggressive, what will Burns do? Counter with the overhand right. And he caught him quite a few times with overhand hooks, whether it was left or right, backing him up and making him think, oh, I just can't rush in on this guy. And both were able to, like I said, have their moments, hurting the other one, backing him up, where it looked like Few more flurries, maybe this is it. But then they would just come through. It was absolutely mind-boggling how terrific this fight was. I almost feel that we were robbed that this wasn't a 5-round bout.
The whole time felt like it should have been 5 rounds, and it honestly felt like there should have been a belt on the line for some reason. Maybe the BMF belt. Who knows? That fight was everything that the Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler fight was. It was a dirty brawl,
yes,
and with so much implications on the line.
Very much so. And for now, clearly he didn't just run through him. So I don't know if you want to put, it was reported that Hosman would get Kobe Covington possibly after this if things with Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman doesn't go through. I don't know if I want to put him there just yet. He edged out a really good fight. I don't know if I want to put him just yet against Kobe. Maybe one more fight in there against another top fighter. Here's the only issue. Who do you pick?
I honestly don't see anyone else but Kobe Covington.
Really?
You had people during the upcoming for this week. You had Dana in certain clips saying that this was a possible contenders fight.
True.
But the fact that, obviously he wasn't going to get a title shot just off of this fight alone with just Gilbert Burns. I think it's perfect. You just had this entire hype train for this fight, and it paid. It paid out completely. So now that we've seen what he looks like against a top contender, a top welterweight, why not give him Kobe Covington? Why not give him the number 1 contender and see, how are you going to compete against the number 1 contender? The guy who everybody says, if it wasn't for Kamaru Usman, if Kamaru Usman was 10 years younger or 10 years older, Kobe Covington's wearing that belt.
This is true, but then I would also argue and say, okay, he just got tested for the first time in 3 rounds. I need to see what he's tested like in 5 rounds. Last thing I want to do is put one of my supposed contenders in there, and he's never had a 5-round main event, and then he gets dragged into deep waters. Look, like him or don't, we know Kobe Covington could go for an entire week and not get tired at all of fighting. So, but that's the problem. Diaz isn't there. Masvidal just lost. Edwards is lined up. I mean, maybe Stephen Thompson, possibly.
I mean, Stephen Thompson's a good option, but I actually don't hate the idea of Masvidal. I don't hate it at all.
Even coming off a loss. I mean, you compare the two guys. One guy's coming off a loss. The other guy's an up-and-comer with how many fights? A handful of fights in the UFC. True.
And if Masvidal, nothing, and if you're wanting your BMF, your number 1 moneymaker, that's not named McGregor, that's not named Diaz, if you want to try and get him back on track, it's a win-win for the UFC.
Well, you got to figure out what's going to happen with Masvidal outside the UFC, considering he likes to fight in restaurants now, not just a cage. But nonetheless, we shall see what goes on from there. So, okay. So for Hosman, he possibly goes on for Covington. Aljamain Sterling possibly going, well, not possibly, most than likely, 9 out of 10 times he's going to fight TJ Dillashaw. What about Alexander Volkanovski?
You already know what I'm going to say, and I'm going to back it up completely, and I'll push this envelope constantly. Max Holloway needs that 3rd fight. There's who else are you going to put with Alexander?
That is a thing. Holloway kind of cleared out the division with some fighters moving up or down. It does seem like it's a clear path for Holloway and Alexander to go at it again. They've given us 2 fights already, 10 rounds, and we still don't know who the true champion is. Like you said, a lot of fans felt like Holloway won the first 2 fights. Clearly, the judges felt Volkanovski won it. It is one of those where you want to say, man, do we have to run it back a 3rd time? Possibly. Yeah, we do. It's a great fight. I would say if he beats Holloway, let's say he beats him for the 3rd time, got to move up?
I really think so. I mean, you hear how he's talking when Conor McGregor is brought up in the press conference. He's talking about, I can move up to 155. And I truly believe him when he says it.
I mean, he used to be over 200 pounds during his rugby days, so it's not unreasonable for him to say, oh, I could go ahead and get some fish and chips and put some weight back on.
A little less dieting, it's no problem at all.
It'll be interesting to see what happens there and what happens with the fallout for the rest of the fighters on the card. But a terrific night of fights for UFC 273. We were able to watch it. We're bringing it to you guys here. Be sure to look forward for more episodes coming forward, whether we recap the shows, preview the fights, or just give you a weekly show if nothing's going on. Come back and join us here on FranchiseSportsMedia.com. I've been Kalani Lua. This is Griffin Kemp. Till next time, fight fans, stay thirsty.
Yes, sir.